So, question for you. How far is too far when using live animals for entertainment value? That's what we're going to be discussing in today's video. I can hear it. I can hear the crickets chirping, and they're literally going, Karen, 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 Karen. Or maybe that's you watching, I don't know. Hey, what's up creatures? It's Em and welcome back to my channel. If you are brand new to my channel, welcome. My name is Em, I'm a former zookeeper and I am a digital animal educator. Today is a difficult topic for me because I adore Mark Rober's content. I truly think he's one of the most innovative and probably one of the most genius minds within the content creator space. However, his latest video, which I had not watched before my DMs got flooded with so many of you offering me your feedback, your concerns, really does raise some really fantastic moral and ethical divisions. And I think that they're worth exploring, especially because this is an animal channel and this video of Mark Rober's did contain live animals. Before we begin this video, I just want to say please do not send any hate whatsoever to Mark Rober or the people he collaborated with on this video. This is a video about education and I really want to hear your thoughts every step of the way. So be sure to like the video and leave your comments as we go throughout this video because I think that we could get some really interesting perspectives here. If you are unfamiliar with Mark Rober, he is a former NASA and former Apple engineer. Now, despite all of these amazing achievements, Mark Rober is probably best known for being a bit of a cheeky content creator who serves payback to people who truly deserve it. For example, his glitter bomb porch pirate videos where he hides a bait package which holds within it the world's finest glitter, which then explodes everywhere along with really questionable, awful smelling substances and films the reaction of those who stole the packages have gone viral numerous times. I have watched them for years. I absolutely enjoy these videos. Now, whilst the last few videos in this series focused predominantly on catching porch pirates here in the United States, they decided to take things to a whole new level this time, going all the way to India and collaborating with other notable YouTubers in order to try and expose call centers in India which scam people out of all of their life savings. These scam artists are ruthless. They are the kinds of people who will specifically target those who are sick, the elderly, out of all of their life savings without a second thought.
Oh, God almighty. I'm exhausted. I can't do this.
Please save my job, ma'am. If I'll not earn for my family will die due to hunger, due to starvation. Oh, please,
yes, of course. I mean, what should I do? I mean, I can...
feeling bad for you. You are also like my grandmother. You're making me cry now. I'm getting attached to you.
Now, how do I fix this?
My retirement hasn't been very good so far. And after today, I know it's not your fault, but it's worse now.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
I would rather just pay it. Otherwise, I'll be worrying about it and I'll be worse in my health.
So it is with great respect that I have for the vast majority of Mark Rober's team who thought that this would be a great idea to take the chance to educate the public and their content viewers on how to identify these scams, how to protect themselves from these scams, along with some input as well from the collaborators who worked on this video too. Very notably Jim Browning, who is another content creator who is able to reverse the calls on these scam artists and actually gain access to CCTV cameras and then communicates and lets these scam artists know that they've been busted. It's incredibly entertaining. Again, it's very much like a Schadenfreude type feeling watching these, so I will link one of his videos down below so you can go and watch it. They also collaborated with another up-and-coming YouTube channel called Trilogy Media, who were the feet on the ground there in India and actually gaining footage and managing operations on the floor in India. media. But also, before we go any further into today's video is a self-sponsored video, and I would love to push one of my affiliate links. As you know, I work with and am an affiliate of Zen Habitats, all of their enclosures, which you can see behind me. If you do keep different kinds of reptiles or amphibians, these are fantastic enclosures. Now, if you are interested in, say, the 4x2x4 bearded dragon enclosure, or the 2x2x2 enclosure, which is right behind me here, or even the best-selling 4x2x2 enclosure, you can go and check them out for yourself using the link down in my description box below. And I would say that the rest of this video is entirely my own views. They do not necessarily align with anybody else that I am affiliated with, so I just want to say that. But please, if you are interested in purchasing a massive upgrade for your reptile, please do consider Zen Habitats. The link is down below, and I do get a percentage as a thank you from Zen for referring you. So if you are planning on getting a reptile, bookmark this video, come back, and you can make a purchase through my link. Thank you very much. It helps to support my channel. Now let's carry on with our video. So I hope that gives you a bit more of an understanding of who Mark Rober is, some of the other videos that he's made in the past, one of which I will link down below so that you can go and reference it along with the video that I'm talking about today, all down in my description box. But now I want to talk about really why I'm interested in making this video, and that is the question, how far is too far when using live animals for entertainment purposes? Let's dive into it. Let's talk a bit about the kinds of animals used in this video and how they were used in the video. In my opinion, the animals which were used were certainly picked because they have the ick factor for the vast majority of people. Initially, Trilogy Media, who were the boots on the ground in this operation, looked into stingless bees.
Once they'd arrived to the beekeeper, they found out you can't just take a few bees, but you have to take the whole hive.
In the car, dude, no. They're gonna get out.
I'm not afraid. Also, apparently, there's no such thing as stingless bees.
Oh my god. Oh,
But given the fact that the bees did have a sting, they didn't want to utilize the bees in this prank where they would send packages into the call center and just cause a little bit of mayhem for these scam artists who are ruining people's lives. And naturally, you don't know if people have bee sting allergies, so they didn't want to cause any harm, so they decided not to use the bees. And I'm glad they didn't use the bees, because bees deserve a ton of respect. Without pollinators, us as a species are doomed. So instead, Trilogy Media pivoted their idea and they went into a local market where, among other things, they found rats. Baby rats.
So we punted on that idea and headed to an open-air market where we could at least secure some rats.
Now, the rats which you can see on your screen right now are the exact rats which they used in the pranks that they pulled on the call center. What I can tell you about these rats is these are not wild rats. These are captive bred rats which were raised in captivity. They are used to being fed. This is not the typical color that you would expect to see a wild rat. And as such, this comes with a few complications and concerns, which I'm going to raise a little bit later as we see them released in the office. The other animals which they found were cockroaches, and initially I thought they were using dubia roaches. Dubia roaches are a very commonly bred roach, especially within the reptile community. They make a fantastic feeder insect for a lot of different reptiles, very high in calcium and protein. However, I don't believe that they used the dubia roaches in later footage. Later footage, as they actually released them in the call center, I believe it might be American cockroaches. Who knows? But we'll talk a bit about that later on as well. So skip forward into the video, and somebody has managed to sneak very craftily these packages into the call center. Now, before the animals are actually released, a couple of other things happen in the video as well. For example, a really nasty smell is released. Something else that they did was they put some food coloring in hand wash and dyed people's hands blue. Now, this was quite funny because it showed who washed their hands in the call center and who didn't wash their hands in the call center, which So slowly, things start to unravel, and the office becomes a bit of a crazy space. Everything from these awful smells to suspect pills being left around, or rather pill boxes being left around, and people's hands being dyed blue. All of that to me was very funny. And then we start seeing the animals being brought out. The device containing the cockroaches was an awesome design. It was essentially almost like an acrylic box, which on the inside then slowly, after a designated amount of time, pushes the cockroaches and has them release out of a little hatch, and then they're able to scatter and cause a little bit of mayhem. Now, unfortunately for some of the cockroaches, things did not end well, with some of this footage being inserted into the final footage of the video, which shows that the animals were not collected, of course, by the call center. Many of them were probably smushed. We can also see somebody coming in after they called reinforcements to come and clean up some of the dead cockroaches. Does it bother you as either an animal lover or a non-animal lover, or like a demi-animal lover, that cockroaches were used and to an extent sacrificed for the sake of this prank? Now, certainly I feel people would have felt worse if this were a box of puppies, which thank goodness it wasn't, because that would have been truly awful. But do you feel that the fact that these were cockroaches makes it okay because in your mind they're vermin or expendable? Or did you not feel okay about it whatsoever? Leave a comment down below, because we're going to do a couple of comparisons later, and I think it would be really interesting to have your feedback.
Followed soon thereafter by our rat friends. And this is possibly my favorite clip of the whole night, where you see a cockroach lead the way and wander all around as they argue and try and make sense of what in the world is possibly happening.
And then finally, they actually released the young rats. Now, granted, the only time I actually saw a rat free and loose in this video was some CCTV footage, which the infiltration team had managed to capture, which showed a wild rat within the building running around. So I think that the logic behind using rats would be that if they would be able to escape, they could potentially live in the walls and maybe continue to do some damage, or would perhaps just not be harmed. Now, the footage is vague because the package is discovered and at least one baby rat, we just see this one with his head poking out here, is discovered. We don't know what happened to that rat, and it felt to me that the rat was left to the mercy of whoever it was who found it. We don't know if it was flushed, if it was killed, if it was discarded, if it was let go, or if it was kept as a pet. Having that uncertainty really bothers me, especially as somebody who has tremendous value and respect for rats. This is Cheddar. Cheddar was originally bred to be a feeder rat for snakes. I picked him up for a secret mission, which I can't talk about just yet, at a local reptile store. It's a very common thing, and it's a legal thing for reptile stores to breed rats for reptile consumption, live rats. It's not legal in the United Kingdom, but it is in the United States. And that's why he's a little bit skittish, but we've been working on him being handled for a couple of weeks now. He was very sick for a while. He had an upper respiratory infection, but he's doing really, really great now. And slowly, he's learning to trust me. He's never tried to bite, even despite the fact that he was raised in a clean drawer, but a drawer nonetheless with a ton of other rats. So it just goes to show you that given the chance, rats are just such lovely, lovely animals, so intelligent, so willing to forgive in many ways. So for me, seeing rats used in an entertainment setting without understanding whether or not they were cared for after the fact is very bothersome to me. But you might feel differently. This could be giving you severe heebie-jeebies right now, which, you know, again, I totally understand. Some people have phobias and some people just don't like rats. I think it's the tail that kind of freaks people out a little bit. But however you feel about rats, I think it's important to remember that no animal deserves to be discarded after being used as a prop for filming purposes. So for me, this was extremely uncomfortable, and one of the reasons why it's uncomfortable, of course, is that element of not understanding what happened next. So I'm going to inject my thoughts here. I am not the biggest fan of animals used for entertainment. For example, back in the UK, I was asked to provide the insects such as mealworms, superworms, cockroaches for a show called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Now, the company that I owned at the time, we all unanimously decided that we were not going to participate because we didn't want our bugs getting squished. It's just not something I'm happy with. Other people might be okay with that. Perhaps you're one of them. And if so, leave a comment down below. But it's just my belief that that's not a good thing to do. So I withdrew from that, and it was just my policy not to kill an animal without cause. Now, day to day, I do feed live animals to other animals. For example, I do feed live cockroaches, dubia cockroaches, to Norbert, my bearded dragon. However, that serves an end purpose and they're still treated with respect up until that point. And yes, while it can be both educational and entertaining, it's not done purely for entertainment value. So for me, I'm kind of okay with that. It's my content. Of course, why wouldn't I be okay with it? Perhaps you're not okay with that. Again, feel free to leave a comment down below. Initially, I had more of an issue with the cockroaches because, as I said before, I thought that they were dubia roaches, which are not a native species in India. Now, once you release a non-native species and it is in an environment where it can thrive, they can become an established invasive species. And this causes so many problems, ecologically speaking. Perhaps the most infamous example of this is the cane toad, which is originally from South America and which was imported to Australia to help with the cane beetle infestation that they were having problems with. Cane beetles were eating up all the crops, and they needed an animal that would eat the cane beetle, so they thought the cane toad, potentially. They imported around 90-something, 98, 99 of these toads, and they did not like the taste of the cane beetle. Instead, they ate everything else, all of the different fauna in Australia, and have actually driven many species to the brink of extinction. They are now extremely populous, especially out in the Australian outback, in the Northern Territories, and it's causing massive issues for the Australian government as well as Australian native wildlife. So that's what happens when you introduce a non-native species into an area where it can thrive. Now, not always, but it can happen. Another example of this is the lionfish in Florida, and actually Florida has a lot of invasive species. For example, the Burmese python, the reticulated python, and they are actually feasting on native birds, native mammals, so it is not a good situation to be in. If you have any other examples that you wish to share of invasive species and how the damage they can do, leave a comment down below. However, upon closer inspection of the footage, it's my belief, though I'm not 100% certain, so maybe you could help me out here, that the actual cockroaches used in India may have indeed been American cockroaches. Now, although American cockroaches clearly means that this is not a native species in India because they're American, they are already established as a pest species in India, as well as in many parts of the world. I'm not saying that this makes it any better, though in your mind it might make it better, so again, share your thoughts on this. But certainly it's not going to have as much of a devastating impact on local wildlife as perhaps bringing in a formerly unknown species into the local environment. Now, quite clearly, as we can see from this footage, some animals were harmed in the making of this video. Whether or not you're okay with it because it's technically a vermin species or a pest species, that's entirely up to you to consider. But what I want to touch on really quickly, and maybe you could see this as splitting hairs, I won't blame you if you do, but Mark Rober specifically mentioned that he wanted to have pranks, including these animals, I am paraphrasing here, which would be harmless pranks. Now, I would argue that the team is taking a big risk here because they may not have known this, but many people either are just unknowingly or very quickly, once exposed to cockroaches, develop allergies to cockroaches, including nasty hives, allergies to their frass, which is just a fancy word for the poop, and as well as developing respiratory issues. There have also been issues of people going into anaphylactic shock once exposed to cockroaches, and so for me it is taking a little bit of a risk and a gamble exposing people to an animal which many people really are allergic to. I'm glad it seems that nobody did have that reaction, and I hope nobody did. Well, I mean, that is debatable because they are scam artists, but certainly if you want not to harm people, you want to have some harmless fun, I would never have used cockroaches, and I will touch a bit later on the animals that I would have used in this prank. Now let's move along to the rats. Now, of course, I might be being biased here because I live with rats, I've raised rats, I think that they're a wonderful species, but many people, I understand, do not like rats. Clearly, the vast majority of people watching Mark Rover's video are probably not cockroach fans. So I'm not anticipating that people feel particularly warmly towards the cockroaches in the beginning. Again, I do believe they were used for that ick factor. But I'm very curious to know how others would feel about the rats being used. Now, rats are a very popular pet the world over, especially here in the United States, where they're always constantly growing in popularity. We know now from extensive research and testing that rats are akin to small dogs in their intelligence. They are a gregarious species. They're very self-aware, and also they are one of the other animals similar to humans which demonstrate a level of empathy to their fellow rats. One of the most famous studies which demonstrates this was the use of chocolate chips in one chamber and a locked up fellow rat in another chamber, and in every single circumstance a rat would choose to free its neighbor and then be denied chocolate rather than going for the chocolate and ignoring their fellow rat in distress, which demonstrates a high level of empathy. Now you might be wondering why chocolate was used, and that could be a whole other video, but of course we all know that chocolate is toxic for dogs, especially dark chocolate, high cocoa count in chocolate, but dark chocolate for rats is actually beneficial, so it's not the same with rats as it is for dogs. In this situation, rats can benefit from dark chocolate and they do crave it. It makes a really good snack for them, just a little bit here and there, like chocolate chips would be absolutely fine. So the fact that a rat would deny itself one of its favorite treats in order to save a rat which it doesn't actually know and it is not family with really speaks highly of rats. So they are very self-aware, very intelligent, and these young rats, just as a little dog, will understand what's going on around them. Now again, with being a harmless prank, let's look at the potential ecological disaster that could happen here. Now yes, this may be a bit far-fetched because we only saw one rat, but sometimes all it takes is one sick animal to infect a colony. I have had this at home here in my own collection where one animal which I failed to adequately quarantine killed off a ton of my reptiles with Cryptosporidium. It was awful. Still kind of recovering, still kind of cleaning out a few enclosures and ongoing testing to make sure it's not going to come back. But that's all it takes is the negligence one time. Now, as I mentioned before, these are not wild rats that they used in this this prank. These are captive bred rats. And there could be benefits there. It could be that they are kept in more sanitary conditions, but given the state of the market, I doubt it. I don't know if these rats were raised to be pets. I don't know if they were raised to be food. Either way, we just don't know if anybody tested the rats to see if they did have any kind of bacteria or any kind of disease which could spread to the wild rats if they were to get out and live in the walls, as is quite clearly the case with some of the rats that this call center already has in their call center. So of course the concern here is that the rats were harmed, because I don't want to see that happen. But going back to the team's dedication to having harmless fun, the rats shocked me. And it's quite clear that they being the team that worked on this video, did not have an animal expert on hand, because anyone who keeps rats or engages with rats knows about rat bite fever. Rat bite fever has killed people, and as the name suggests, all it takes is a rat bite. Just one. Now, given the fact that these rats were probably not used to being handled and then inserted into a dark box, perhaps for a couple of hours, perhaps only a couple of minutes. I don't know how long they were in there, but again, ethically, I'm not on board with that because rats are very, very aware of their surroundings, and that would be terrifying for a rat. To say very little of the ability to breathe, not standing in their own excrement or pee and burning their fingers and toes in their own urine. But certainly the person who's holding the box is lucky that this is a young rat. Now, I'm not saying that a young rat cannot deliver a bite with rat bite, which then develops into rat bite fever. But this young rat is probably more inquisitive. That's what I'm seeing. He's hesitant and he's interested in his surroundings, this particular rat. But if you have a cornered rat that is fearful and they bite, you're gonna know about it, and those teeth hurt. There is nothing akin to a rat bite. Rat bites are some of the worst that I have encountered in my time working with so many species, and they go straight through the skin, and they're so precise. It's like stilettos. Just, it's so precise and so painful, and if you don't get that seen to, it can develop into rat bite fever. So I think that was an incredibly big risk to take for the team, given that we couldn't tell if the people were going to abuse the rat or try and hold it or goad each other with it. So I really hope that they let the rat go and maybe it had a chance at a nice life, even though it's technically now invasive because it's not a wild rat species. But my thought is that somebody probably dispatched it, which is such a shame because rats do make incredible pets and they are so self-aware and they are such empathetic creatures, and to me I do view them as little dogs, so that was difficult to look at. And I think perhaps a consideration that the team missed out on an opportunity with is actually working with an animal expert. For example, there's a ton of animal experts on YouTube who immediately comes to mind. Ants Canada, who I don't know if they're an actual entomologist, entomologist being someone who actually studies insects, but certainly they would know somebody who could have advised on the appropriate way to source perhaps different kinds of insects that wouldn't have had such an ecological issue. And also, with regards to the rats, I think that they could have learned more about the issues surrounding rat bite fever if they spoke to someone, say, Coyote Peterson, who again is somebody who is extremely knowledgeable on all kinds of animals and has a team with a wealth of knowledge. They have biologists and environmentalists, so certainly I think in the future, if they were planning on using animals again, which I hope that they don't, but if they do, certainly having somebody with knowledge on the team would have been a real asset, especially given that they worked with local authorities, additional YouTube channels, high up authorities, people like the FBI, which, you know, I'm not sure if they actually did mention the FBI, but that's just like an example, but certainly like international police. So I think there was a missed opportunity here. Now, there's no denying that animals used in entertainment bring in huge crowds. I mean, you can just look at SeaWorld, you can look at traveling circuses, which were so popular for so long, and I do not agree with traveling circuses, which use exotic animals. I just don't. But we all know that ratings are important. I just wish that the team had considered alternatives when using animals. For example, I think that using their original glitter bomb model, they could have perhaps packed that tightly with the exoskeletons of mealworms. These are very commonly found in garden centers. They're a very popular bird food choice as a snack. So that could have already been a little bit of mayhem because, you know, they crumble, they can get everywhere. So, and they're not nice to look at if you're not into insects. So I think that was a bit of a missed opportunity there. You know, husky fur also comes to mind. I'm just thinking of glitter and how difficult that is to get off of people's clothes. Husky fur, I'm telling you, now that I live with 2 huskies, and huskies are not my breed, there is fur everywhere. Like, even just looking down at my clothes right now, I'm covered in white husky fur. They should have got some husky fur and stuffed it in the vents, so every time they turn on their air conditioning, just Christmas. And that Christmas never goes away. It lasts year round. Now this might be a bit mean, and perhaps it doesn't speak too highly of me, but a very famous old prank is getting a really smelly fish, something like sardines, dead sardines, canned sardines and sewing them into the bottom lip of curtains. Now, I didn't see any curtains at this call center, but certainly there would have been air vents, or even if they're using a traditional keyboard, if you were just to put some down into the keyboard spaces, just a little bit. Maybe put them in a blender and put them down there. The smell of the rotting fish would be disgusting, and they would just never be able to find the source of it, whereas the fart smell's gone after probably a couple of hours, I would assume. I don't know about the sort of composition of the scent that they used, but this would last a really long time. So I don't know if that's just really mean of me, but certainly there are ways to use animals in pranks which do not further harm an animal, or rather harm a living animal. How do you feel about this? How do you feel in general about animals used for entertainment value? Because essentially that is what this was. It was for entertainment value. There was nothing truly educational about using these animals, although the video itself did hold a lot of educational value, how to not get scammed. Overall, this is such a successful content creator and such a successful series that I don't feel that they really needed to add live animals to the mix. It didn't bring any benefit, I felt. The educational factor was there. I learned so much about how these call centers operate and just how devastating it is for people that the animals in a way were just kind of distracting. So I love the idea of the glitter bombs. I think that's funny. It's almost like his calling card now, and scam artists seem to be familiar with these boxes and they kind of like live in fear for them, which is great, because scam artists are just absolute scummy people, especially when they're preying on the elderly and people who are going through cancer and suffering awful things that I hope I will never have to be able to imagine. But the use of the animals for me was distracting and unnecessary. But that's where I'm going to leave my thoughts. How do you feel about this video? Have you watched it yet? If not, then feel free to go down into my description box where you can find a link to the video that I'm talking about. But as ever, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope I will see you in another video soon. Bye!